And basically, the Lord's response was, relax ka lang. No problem. And in the context of today's conversation, if I can move that stone, I can remove that stone that's standing in the way of you fulfilling my plan for your life. You know, folks, what happened? Only a few weeks later, I was called to another meeting. So I was to make the nth presentation of the project. It's a current status at that time. So I made the presentation. In that meeting was the top brass of the whole conglomerate. Understand, this is the boss of my boss. Okay? And then we're there in that meeting room, and I make the presentation, and I finish, and the top brass person says, everything you presented is okay, but I have made a decision. This project is going to be transferred from your company to another company in the conglomerate. They will now take charge. And you know, folks, of course you understand, the other people in the room, my colleagues, is like, huh? I was the only one smiling. Why? Because God removes stones up to this day. He will turn your sorrow into joy. He will turn your fear into peace. And when the circumstances need to be changed, He will change them, and nothing can stop Him. Because the one who rose from the dead, who removed the stone, He is alive today. Sorrow into joy, fear into peace. We go to our last encounter, unbelief into faith. And this is a bit tricky because on the one hand, we have to make a choice to trust Jesus. But on the other hand, and I know I've been there are times when you struggle to really surrender yourself, your situation, the unknown, to the Lord. So let's see what happened in this third and final encounter in John chapter 20, verses 24 to 29. Now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, unless I put my finger where the nails were, unless I put my hand into his side, I will not believe it." I will not believe. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. And though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he turned to Thomas and he said to him, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Stop doubting and believe. Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Folks, don't be mistaken. This was not just any exclamation by Thomas. This is not equivalent to OMG. No. This was a transformational encounter with the risen Jesus, where Thomas went from unless, he went from there to my Lord and my God. Jesus was gracious to Thomas, and He will be gracious to us in our times of doubt. But His message is still the same. Stop doubting and believe. And He told Thomas in verse 29, Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." I have a question for all of us. Do you want to be blessed today? Yes. Well, Jesus said, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." You see, the problem sometimes is we could be like Thomas. We could be setting conditions before we surrender, before we yield to the Lordship of Jesus in our lives. We might be thinking, well, He has to change my circumstances first before I completely surrender to Him. Or He has to give me a sign or something like that. Or He has to change the character of my husband or my wife first before I yield completely and trust Him. Jesus is saying, that's not the way it's done. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. When we don't see what's around the corner, when it seems so dark up ahead, but we choose to trust Jesus. And just like that man in one of the Gospels who said, I believe, help me overcome my unbelief. That's a very honest and humble prayer that the Lord will honor. And there our sorrow turns to joy, our fear turns to peace, even our unbelief turns to faith. I'd like to call on a couple who were in a dark place not long ago. But the Lord, through His encounter with them and their encounter with Him, turned their sorrow into joy, their fear into peace. And if ever there was any doubt, the Lord dealt with that as well. And even if they can't see what's around the corner, even today, they choose to believe their risen Lord. Please welcome Danny and Eileen Helito.